The Young and the Restless spoilers shock Wednesday full episodes May 21, 2025. Claire Spencer had spent most of her adult life tiptoeing around Victor Newman's grand expectations, but nothing could have prepared her for the moment she stood in the vaulted foyer of the Newman estate and met her grandfather's steely gaze. She had practiced her words in the mirror 100 times, a gentle request that Victor bless her next big step, one that would change her life forever. Heart pounding in her chest, she said, Pop, Vic, I want to ask you for your blessing. Kyle and we've talked about our future, and I'd like your permission to take the next step." For a heartbeat, the silver candelabras flickered as though time itself had paused. Then Victor's lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. He inclined his head once, curtly, and said, "I'm not thrilled with your plans, Claire. I never am when they don't begin with me." No offer of compromise followed. Only a cold echo in the vast entry hall that reminded her she was still in the lion's den. Yet the disapproval she had expected, she'd faced it before, did little to dampen the warmth of her heart. That very afternoon, she met Kyle Abbott in Willow Park, where spring tulips trembled in the breeze and the sky arced overhead in a perfect, cloudless blue. Kyle arrived bearing a small bouquet of wildflowers, pink dogwoods and white violets, and a shy smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. The sting of Victor's frosty reception melted away as Claire wrapped her fingers around Kyle's hand, the two of them stepping onto the winding cobblestone path like adventurers discovering new territory. They talked of bright things, their plans for a lakeside picnic on Memorial Day, the nursery they'd set up in her guest room for her little nephew, and the wedding they dreamed of planning together once they had Victor's blessing, or at least, a truce. Under the dappled sunlight filtering through the cherry blossoms, they found themselves caught in a moment that felt both timeless and urgent. Kyle brushed a stray curl from Claire's forehead and said, "You're my sunshine, Claire. I love you more every day." She laughed softly, pressing a gentle kiss to his cheek, sweet, unhurried, and full of promise. He responded in kind, leaning in beneath the arch of pink petals as if the flowers themselves had arranged the perfect frame. For a blissful hour, they were two hearts beating in harmony, rosy-cheeked, hopeful, and certain that nothing, no matter how daunting, could extinguish the light they shared. But in Genoa City, peace is always provisional, and as Claire and Kyle strolled hand in hand toward the wrought iron bench overlooking the lily pond, a pair of dark-lensed sunglasses and a sleek leather jacket slipped into the periphery of their idyll. Audra Charles, in town for a Dumas Enterprises summit, had wandered into Society Cafe earlier that afternoon to pick up her takeout order. She recognized Kyle's familiar profile immediately, and the sight of him with a woman as radiant as Claire tugged at her practiced composure. Audra's reputation was built on poise and discretion, but seeing Kyle's tender grin ignited a flicker of envy that she couldn't shake. She collected her glass of iced green tea, thanked the barista, and stepped onto the sidewalk, following at a discreet distance. From her vantage point behind a magnolia tree, Audra watched as Claire and Kyle settled onto the bench, their heads close together as they whispered jokes and dreams. A pang of something sharper than regret, perhaps the sting of missed opportunity, spurred her to lean forward, squinting through the foliage until she could catch the curve of Claire's smile or the way Kyle's hands slipped around her waist. The gentle intimacy between them filled every space of Audra's mind, and though she'd sworn herself above such petty games, she couldn't resist tilting her head, as if inviting the universe to acknowledge her presence. Claire looked up, startled, but Audra merely winked and lifted her iced tea in a mock toast before turning on her heel and slipping away, her dark hair swirling like a banner in the spring air. Half an hour later, Claire and Kyle returned to the entrance of the park, planning to grab coffee at Crimson Lights and linger over pastries. They paused to take a selfie beneath a flowering dogwood, capturing the moment forever in pixels and perfect smiles. Neither of them noticed Audra slipping around the park's edge, retracing their path with feline stealth, nor did they sense the electric tension brewing between the three of them. Audra slowed at the cafe's entrance, slipping through the door just as Victoria Newman and Cole Howard emerged with steaming cups in hand. Victoria and Cole had chosen Crimson Lights for a reason. Its cozy booths and warm brass accents provided the perfect backdrop for a conversation long overdue. Cole had been in and out of the hospital these past weeks, fighting a lingering fever that refused to break. Victoria, balancing her duties as head of Newman Enterprises with her roles as wife and mother, had grown sensitive to every cough, every shift in his demeanor. When Cole sank wearily into the booth across from her, Victoria studied his face, his pale, but determined, with eyes that still sparkled when he saw her. She reached out, enclosing his hand in both of hers. "Cole," she began, voice soft, "we need to talk about us. About what we want from our future." Cole's eyebrows lifted in gentle surprise. "Victoria, if you're hesitating," he started, but she shook her head, her gaze unwavering. "No, I'm not hesitating. I'm ready to make a choice. Because if this illness of yours is more serious than we feared, then I want you to know I'd marry you again today. I want to show you I'm here, no matter what comes next." A tremor of emotion curled around Cole's lips as he pressed her hand to his heart. "Victoria, I love you," he whispered. "More than I ever knew was possible." In that moment, the clatter of porcelain cups and the hum of quiet conversations around them faded into insignificance. They were two souls recommitting themselves to each other, passion tempered by the wisdom of shared challenges. Outside the cafe, Audra paused at the window, unseen. Her eyes flicked from Victoria and Cole's entwined hands to the empty chairs across the table, where she imagined herself slipping into the warm light of their affection. A pang of envy tightened in her chest, tempered by something else, admiration for a love that had endured storms and still burned bright. She tapped her fingers against the glass, caught between two worlds. The one she inhabited, built on shadows and strategic alliances, and the one that Victoria and Cole shared, built on vulnerability and genuine devotion. Inside, Clare and Kyle arrived arm in arm, radiant from their afternoon in the park. They waved at Victoria and Cole, who returned the gesture with bright smiles. All four converged under Crimson Light's soft chandelier glow, exchanging hellos that buzzed with the promise of shared warmth. As Clare dropped into the booth beside Victoria, she launched into a bubbling account of her proposal to Victor, and his predictable disapproval. "He says he doesn't like my idea of a pop Vic party," Clare pouted, eyes wide. "Can you believe it?" Victoria chuckled, flipping a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's Victor," she said. "He likes things his way. But don't let him rob you of your joy." Kyle nodded vigorously, leaning across the small table to squeeze Clare's hand. "We'll have our celebration," he declared. "With or without his blessing." Cole, nursing his coffee, raised an eyebrow at Victoria, who merely smiled and winked, as though the weight of Victor's disapproval was no match for love's unbreakable bond. But as they settled into the booth, sharing stories of spring's arrival and mutual friends' antics, none of them noticed the flicker of movement outside. Audra's silhouette slipping away into the afternoon haze, her mind already spinning with plans to turn what she had seen to her own advantage. For in Genoa City, peace is always provisional, and even the sweetest romances can be shadowed by an unseen hand. As the evening deepened, the four friends laughed over cherry tarts and buttered croissants, savoring the rare interlude of camaraderie. They toasted to new beginnings. Clare and Kyle's future, Victoria and Cole's recommitment, and the simple joys of friendship and shared moments. Somewhere beyond the cafe's ivy-draped windows, Audra watched them through the dimming light, her thoughtful expression betraying the ripple of calculation beneath her composed exterior. Tomorrow, the delicate threads of their lives might unravel to reveal old wounds, fresh betrayals, or strategic maneuverings by those who weave their own narratives in the shadows. But tonight, bathed in the golden glow of crimson lights, Clare, Kyle, Victoria, and Cole allowed themselves to believe in the power of love, unapologetic, buoyant, and strong enough to withstand any storm that might come. Because in a city defined by ambition and secrecy, sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply to hold fast to the ones you love, and to savor the beauty of a single, unguarded moment. Genoa City's crisp spring air held a certain electricity on this particular afternoon, as if the very atmosphere sensed the brewing tensions that would soon engulf its most prominent families. Inside the softly lit embrace of crimson lights, two familiar faces sat tucked away in a corner booth, their voices low, their postures rigid with unspoken questions. Nick Newman stirred his latte absent-mindedly, the steam rising in delicate curls as he tried to read Sharon's expression across the table. Their recent days together, shared laughter over family crises, long drives out to the Newman ranch, the gentle comfort of mutual understanding, had drawn them closer than either of them had anticipated. Yet Nick knew there was more to Sharon's eyes than gratitude or friendship. Today, her gaze was sharp, inquisitive, tinged with something he could only interpret as jealousy. "Sharon," Nick began, his tone careful, "you sounded upset on the phone. What's on your mind?" Sharon's fingers tapped a rhythmic staccato on her coffee cup. She took a slow breath, her usual composure rattled by the gnawing doubt that had crept in since Nick had been spending so much time helping Phyllis Summers through her latest trials. "Nick," she finally said, voice soft yet insistent, "I don't blame you for being there for Phyllis. She's been through a lot. But, lately it feels like I'm losing my place in your world. Could there be, something more between you and Phyllis?" Nick's heart seized. He reached across the table, covering Sharon's hand with his own. "Sharon, you know there's nothing romantic between Phyllis and me. She's my sister, our history is complicated, but it's familial. With you, it's different." He searched her eyes. "I care about you more than I've ever admitted, and I don't want you to feel second." Sharon offered a thin smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I hope you understand that when I saw you leaning into her pain, hearing her cry on the phone, my imagination ran wild. She paused, collecting herself. "I just needed to hear it from you." Nick squeezed her hand. "I'm here, Sharon. Always." But even as he spoke those words, both of them sensed the fragility of their current equilibrium. Outside the cafe's rain-spattered windows, spring sunlight clashed with rolling clouds, mirroring the turbulence between comfort and doubt in their hearts. Across town, in the stately halls of Chancellor Winters and Associates, Abby Winters paced her expansive office, eyes darting to her phone as she reread the text that had just come through. "Amanda Sinclair will be in GC next week." Details to follow. The name stirred a familiar restlessness in Abby's chest. Amanda Sinclair, legal counsel to the enigmatic Aristotle Dumas, had once brought change to their city, forging alliances, unraveling mysteries. Abby remembered the ripple of curiosity and unease when Amanda first arrived, her white-knuckled calm, her air of knowledge just beyond reach. Moments later, the door opened with an almost ceremonial precision, and Amanda entered, clipboard in hand, her silk blazer catching the light. Abby bristled at her approach. "Amanda," she said, forcing courtesy into her tone, "I got your message. What's Dumas's next move? And why now?" Amanda's gaze was unflappable. "Abby, Aristotle values the Winters name, respects your family's legacy. He asked me to let you know that his current priorities do not involve personal entanglements with the Winters Foundation. He is focused on broader philanthropic initiatives, global partnerships, educational endowments, but you, Abby, should not worry. He has no intention of undermining your work." Abby crossed her arms, eyebrows raised. "So I should just take your word for it?" "I would," Amanda replied smoothly, "if I didn't understand your caution. But trust that Dumas wishes only to bolster, not encroach upon, the foundation. If you have specific concerns, I can relay them directly to him." Abby's fingers twined at her sides. She knew Amanda's reputation for discretion and for keeping secrets. "I won't pretend I'm not worried," Abby admitted. "When a man who never appears in public praises your work and then disappears into the shadows, all I can think is, what does he want?" Amanda offered a sympathetic nod. "Sometimes the most powerful support comes without fanfare. But I'll make sure your concerns are heard." With a measured smile that barely touched her eyes, Amanda turned and glided from the office, leaving Abby to wonder whether her unease was prudence or paranoia. Meanwhile, in an elegantly cluttered living room at Fenmore's department store loft, Lauren Fenmore stared out the rain-slicked window, a tumbler of whiskey untouched on the coffee table at her feet. Her marriage to Michael Baldwin, once a romance of mutual respect and playful banter, languished under the weight of career pressures and family expectations. Their most recent clash, over Michael's feud with Victor Newman, had fractured the easy rapport they once shared. Lauren's phone buzzed with a text from Michael, meeting with Victor tomorrow. Wish me luck. She typed a quick reply, good luck, love, but the fingers hovering above the send button trembled. Did she really wish him luck? Would luck even matter against Victor's ruthless tactics? True enough, the next morning Michael found himself in the gleaming boardroom of Newman Enterprises, across from Victor himself. Michael, Victor began, his tone razor-sharp, I understand you've been critical of my decisions regarding Kyle and the party Claire wants. Let me give you a word of advice, stay in your lane. Victor's dark eyes bored into Michael's soul. If you can't respect my family's choices, perhaps you should consider stepping away from anything that involves me. Michael clenched his fists beneath the table. The thought of walking away from Victor's orbit, his father's influence, his inheritance, his privileges, sent a cold realization through him. Victor's power was woven into every aspect of his life. Yet the anger that had built up over years of paternal neglect and intimidation surged to the surface. I'm tired of being cowed, Victor, Michael replied, voice low but firm. I've taken your warnings, your insults, everything a son shouldn't endure from his father. But I'm not afraid of you anymore. Victor leaned back, amused despite himself. Is that a threat or a confession? He asked. Michael stood, shoulders squared. It's a declaration. I'm done playing by your rules. I will walk away if I must. Victor's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. Try it, son. See how far you get without my name on your ledger. With that, he dismissed Michael, who left the office with a mixture of exhilaration and dread. Outside, Lauren waited in the sleek Newman parking garage. As Michael emerged, she saw his jaw set, his eyes bright with determination, and her own resolve hardened. Perhaps the marriage they once had could survive if they both chose freedom over fear. Out in Willow Park, Claire Spencer and Kyle Abbott sat on their favorite wrought iron bench, the world around them awash in budding greens and splashes of pastel blooms. After Victor's refusal to bless Claire's proposal, they had laughed, kissed, and reaffirmed their decision to forge ahead with or without his approval. Now, with Claire draped against Kyle's shoulder, she whispered, I love that we don't need his blessing to be happy. Kyle kissed the top of her head. We'll celebrate our own way. Something intimate, just us and the people who matter. But as they rose to walk back toward the cafe, Kyle's phone buzzed with an incoming alert. Audra Charles has arrived, taking table by front window. His pulse quickened. That can't be good, he muttered. Claire turned, linking her arm through his. If it's Audra, it's nothing we can't handle together. Her voice rang with brave conviction, but Kyle felt the first prickle of unease. He remembered the warnings from Holden Novak and the investigations of Sally Spectra. He knew Audra's presence in Crimson Lights would not be coincidental. Sure enough, as they approached the cafe's glowing entrance, they glimpsed Audra seated alone at the front window, her posture impeccable, her gaze directed purposefully at the booth across the room. Claire and Kyle exchanged a steeled glance and approached, footsteps deliberate. Audra, Kyle greeted, his tone polite yet wary. Audra's lips curved into a welcoming smile as she rose. Kyle Abbott, she said, her voice like silk over steel. Claire Spencer. She inclined her head in a courteous nod to Claire, then returned her attention to Kyle. I wasn't expecting you here, she murmured, arching an eyebrow. Kyle forced a pleasant smile. We decided to have coffee and discuss our plans. Would you like to join us? Claire tensed beside him, ready to fend off any calculated charm. Audra paused, as though considering the offer. Then she said, "Thank you, but I'm just picking up some documents. Perhaps another time." With that, she swept past them, leaving Clare and Kyle in a charged silence. Claire exhaled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Did she just?" Kyle nodded. "She's watching. We need to be on guard." As they stepped inside, the stage was set for another round in Genoa City's ongoing theater of love, power, and subterfuge. In the seats of crimson lights, the players shifted like pieces on a board, Nick and Sharon, navigating the precarious boundaries between old loyalties and new longings. Abby Winters, testing her faith in Dumas's intentions against Amanda Sinclair's guarded reassurances. Lauren Fenmore and Michael Baldwin, standing at the precipice of independence, both personal and marital. Clare and Kyle, daring to dream of a future they must fiercely protect. Audra Charles, the ever-watchful strategist whose next move remained anyone's guess. In Genoa City, no meeting is truly casual, no glance merely polite, and no promise without its hidden clause. As afternoon fades into evening and the cafe's neon lights glow brighter, each character tucks their vulnerabilities behind practiced facades, waits for the right moment to strike, or to surrender. Because here, in the city of relentless ambition and fragile hearts, tomorrow's headlines will be written by those bold enough to seize the truth or bold enough to hide it. And for these 6 intertwined souls, the question remains.